comes to the TV show Power Book 4 Force, I'm going to be completely honest and say this was a better experience watching wise compared to its first season. Firstly, I enjoyed how no one is safe as more characters' lives are on the line, which really adds to the tension. It can be characters who are quite big, such as Walter Flynn, to somewhat small characters like Kate, Tommy's mother, all at the risk of being killed. Another thing I really enjoyed was the violence is definitely being upgraded since its previous season, and we're seeing bloodshed nearly each and every episode. Whether it's characters having to kill or characters nearly being killed, it really is all over the place. Very violent indeed, and what's even better is instead of just these mini shootouts here and there, we get more explosives and higher weaponry. Now, the plot itself was very hooking. We see Tommy being very strategic and planning a way to get his competitors to go to war at each other so that he and Diamond become the distro of Chicago, and does a very good job. We're seeing him learn a lot from Ghost, and it's definitely an improvement from the previous season, as I don't think he was that clever with his ideas, personally speaking. Unlike last season, that we actually see the police getting involved after a failed drive-by goes on, and sadly we see a child being murdered, and we've really seen the police being very determined in going after Tommy Egan, even to the point that one of the officers is ignoring what is reasonable advice because they're so hot on the pursuit of catching their suspect. Another thing I really enjoyed about this series is, amidst all the violence and the gritty humour and the very dark images we see, they show some realism, and quite disturbing realism. As like I mentioned earlier, we see a child being murdered because of a failed drive-by, but we also see Diamond mentoring a child who's being abused in the community as he is standing up against those who are dealing drugs in Chicago. And it's quite sad that Diamond, after mentoring him, giving him some self-confidence and ability to stand up to those, he stands up to the wrong guy and gets killed. And what's really even more disturbed about this is it's not an adult he stands up to, but it's a child the same age as him pulling the trigger and killing another child. And it's really sad, as this is what is happening in the United States. This is what happens in the drug game with those who do sell drugs. On that occasion, they do end up having a gun on them and will use it. I really appreciate how they show this is the reality, that a lot of drug dealers in America, these are their actions. I think I really respect that they put that in. They didn't try and glorify it, they didn't try and make it so dramatic, they just showed it for what it was. And I really appreciate that. Through this show we see a lot of themes. The first one that I noticed was the theme of growth. We see this with the character Diamond, who is on parole at this point, and he is selling drugs on the daily. But what starts off as a way to impress his PO and get him off his back actually becomes his reality as he starts to drift away from all these drug meetings that Tommy is setting up, and instead is actually going to meetings about talking about change and actually talking about helping the community and doing a lot of good things. And you begin to see that this character is growing. He wants to move away from the drug game and live a legit life. Sadly, this growth is taken away when that child he was mentoring gets gunned down because of his beliefs against the drug culture in Chicago, and we see Diamond go through a spiral which throws him back into his old life, and it's quite sad really. On the other hand, we see the character Kate, Tommy's mother, really trying to grow as a person and become more sober because of her grandson D-Mac. She wants to actually be in this person's life and actually enjoy that. It's quite a surprising thing to see actually, because as this character has been in the franchise of Power for so long, we have known her as a drug taker, whether she's hassling Tommy for cocaine, doing cocaine with her own son, or just doing cocaine in the background. It's really quite fascinating to see that she wants to make this change, and that change being getting sober, and we see that it has a positive impact on her, and she's actually doing little things here and there for her children, Tommy and JP. Another theme I noticed was the theme of forgiveness, again with those same two characters. Diamond, as he finally forgives his brother and they settle the score that was in the previous series, and actually showing that they did have a great relationship. And then on Kate's side of things, we're seeing that she has been forgiven not only by JP for abandoning him as a child, but then JP is forgiven by his son for also doing that same action. The last theme I noticed was the theme of backstabbing. This is a huge theme throughout the entire show. We see this with characters like Tommy, who is backstabbing the distro he's getting his drugs from and somewhat causing a drift between the Serbs and Miguel's gang, causing a war and being able to profit off of it with ease. We see Gennard, who is Diamond's brother, who, even though he's fixed the relationship with his brother, he still harbours resentment towards Tommy and begins to hatch up a plan to get his revenge. When it comes to the finale, I'm going to be completely honest and say it was an amazing watch, as we see Tommy do a 180 and manipulate all those around him. Not only the police, but also his competitors, and he is able to become distro. Sadly, the one secret he kept at heart is revealed, and it makes a great cliffhanger. But also on the other hand, we see tensions arise between Diamond and Tommy, as Tommy is not very truthful when it comes to Diamond, and Diamond doesn't know if he can trust Tommy, and it makes a very interesting tension scene, and this is definitely something we can see develop into the next season. When it comes to criticisms, I'll have to be honest, I have two, and the first one is aimed at Tommy Egan, as they make him quite an unlikable character in this season, especially when it's with family. We notice this when we see D-Mac, his nephew, get into a serious situation, and him and his father JP decide to send him away as it's for his own good. That's the part I agree with. What I don't agree with is how they handle telling the news to Kate, as instead of telling her the truth, they tell her that they killed her only grandson, and this does irreparable damage not only to her mental state but her sobriety. And just as when she's getting back into the horse that is sobriety, she is thrown another blunder, as she just wants to talk to Tommy, but he just throws her bag of cocaine and pushes her aside. And it's just really sad, as she just wanted to talk and somewhat reconcile with her son. The next criticism is towards the drug of Talia, which was quite a big thing in season 1, but I feel like the way they dealt with it in this season was, it felt as if the writers had to acknowledge it, but at the same time they really didn't want to continue this story any longer and throw it under the bus, which I understand, but at the same time this drug was quite a big thing in the first season, so the way they dealt with it just didn't make sense to me. As the drug had quite an effect on people, you'd think people would want to buy this, yet just because the recipe gets leaked by Tommy himself, that's it, no one wants to deal with it, which really baffled me. But overall, I really did enjoy this show. I think they definitely doubled down on the violence, the backstabbing. We're seeing Tommy Egan definitely being more clever, having more ghost tendencies than he'd like to admit. And again, I just think they definitely made a much better show than the previous season. So overall, is it good? I'd say it's great. Rating wise, I would give it an 8.5 out of 10. When it comes to would I rewatch it, 100% I would. On the grand scheme of watching all things that are power related, this is not one I'm going to miss. I'm definitely binging all of it all the way through. Now when it comes to recommendations, I'm going to say my usuals, that being the Power franchise itself, the TV show BMF, and the TV show Snowfall. Definitely check those out. Those are my recommendations. This has been my review for the TV show Power Book 4 Force. If you have enjoyed, please like and subscribe, but most importantly, thank you and have a nice day.